You ever wonder if anyone besides Palpatine could have executed Order 66? What's up, meta nerds? This video is all about a Jedi that was able to execute Order 66. Of course, this was after the infamous ending of the Clone Wars. It's a really interesting story from this canon comic. I'll explain how this happened and how it ties into the Purge Troopers, who would play a big role in the Fallen Order game. And then at the end there's a little speculation on how he may have pulled this off, so I really want to get your guys' opinion on this. Important background information is that there were 150 of these so-called General Orders, which were memorized by every clone. This is true in canon as well via the sourcebook Rise of the Separatists, but in Legends we do get a lot more detail. A quote from Order 66, a Republic Commando novel reads, "Karaika, we've got 150 Shabla contingency rules. Everything from arresting the Chancellor if he goes gaga, to reducing key allied worlds to slag if they switch sides. So for example, 4 and 5 deal with the transfer of command if the Supreme Chancellor is unfit. Order 37 deals with the suppression of communications concerning civilian casualties and disposal of their bodies, a particularly dark order. While again with 65 we see that it concerns the removal of the Chancellor, even allowing for lethal force to be used. And just a funny side note, Palpatine added Order 151 right after Darth Vader's creation, at a time when the army was mostly still clones, and so it would have turned the entire clone army against Vader. But as you can see by the detail in these orders, the Senate was involved in their creation. A lot of the orders revolve around the transfer of power, and there were a bunch of fail-safes in place against Palpatine. And so one of the things people have always wondered is, could anybody just say, execute Order so-and-so, and like a spell, the clones would all just fall in line? Well, this canon story sheds some light on what that might look like. On Mon Cala in 18 BBY, 1 year after the end of the war, Ferren Barr is a Jedi survivor in hiding. He is consumed with finding out how and why the clones turned against their Jedi partners, saying, quote, "I've been studying the Purge, trying to understand how we could lose so completely, so quickly. I learned about Order 66, poor deluded Dooku, just how deeply it went. But still, we should have been able to foresee our doom. We were peering outward, when we should have been looking at ourselves." I think that shows that he came across some combination of information on the story of Tipley's death, and or Tup's and Five's role in the revelation of the inhibitor chips. We see that he really understood the workings and secret projects of Kamino. When he is confronted by the Inquisitors and their Purge Troopers, he uses the Force to rip their helmets off. He sees the faces of young clones of Jango Fett, just like the troopers he once fought alongside. It is just as he predicted, that these clones were the last batch, released just after the Purge. But they would still have the inhibitor chips in their brains, which were all implanted early in the clone's growth. He also knows that the Inquisitors themselves are Jedi that were captured and turned to the dark side. And with the knowledge of how Sidious so quickly cut down the Jedi Order, he tries his hand at it. As he hoped, the clones turn on the Jedi, firing at him but also at their Inquisitor masters. And they even kill the 10th brother. During the fight, Barr says that the clones are merely machines, little better than droids. A shocking statement to hear coming from a Jedi, but you could see it as part of the truth in what he's saying is that the very fact that he ordered them just like a voice command. But I think there was a bit more going on here, and I really want to see what you guys think. All throughout this comic, we see that Ferren Barr is not your typical Jedi. Perhaps driven to take these colder tactics during such pressing times, we see that he uses his Force powers to manipulate the minds of his early followers. He Force tricks them into joining him, and he's fine with pushing them to actions that he knows will lead to their death. Also, something about this scene is a bit off. If you look close, it appears that he may be manipulating King Lichar, with the Mon Cala's immediate and simple response of yes, yes. If we use the details we have from Legends on the orders, the clones needed this order to be verified as coming from the Supreme Chancellor, and we can assume that the orders that were against the Chancellor had to be verified as coming from the Senate. And that makes a lot of sense. If the Chancellor went rogue and did something that the Senate disapproved of, like, I don't know, killing off the whole Jedi Order, if the Senate disapproved of that, they could have just as easily used the GAR to remove or kill Palpatine. Problem was, as the Sith Lord so eloquently put it,
I am the Senate.
Meaning not just that he took all their power, but that he had so manipulated them that they would always agree with him, even to the point of believing this Jedi conspiracy. The few dissidents would be drowned out by the cheering support of whatever he did, and so it isn't as easy as a spell, that you merely have to say execute Order 66 and the army robotically obeys the voice command. The inhibitor chip may help to make this happen, overriding whatever bond those clones might have had with their Jedi, or likewise if the Senate issued it, it would override any bonds that they might have had for their Chancellor. But still not from anyone's command, but only coming from the Chancellor or the Senate. So I think Barr may have used some sort of mind trick in conjunction with the correct voice command. We see his fingers in the typical persuasion stance, and the comic arc goes out of its way to show us that he's really skilled at this, and does it often. It wouldn't make sense if everyone could just issue this command, but it does leave open an interesting idea that perhaps if Mace and friends weren't in such a rush to confront Darth Sidious, they could have tried telling the Senate to execute Order 65, or even the Jedi themselves could have issued it by mind-tricking a group of clones into perceiving the order as coming from the Senators. I thought that was really interesting, but what do you think of all this? I really want to know your guys' thoughts on this story. At first I didn't like the idea of this Jedi being able to execute Order 66, but I think when combined with the Force mind trick it may make sense. So what do you think the implications are for the lore and what if scenarios? Do you think it makes sense if Barr was using a mind trick in conjunction with the voice command? Please let me know down in the comments below. As for behind the scenes facts, this story comes from the Darth Vader comics 13 to 17, and here are some of the Legends books referenced. If you want to connect with us on social media, find ways that you can help support this channel for free, or check out our Patreon or PayPal, be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon. But most important of all, remember, Mace really should have went to the Senate instead of rushing to the Senate. And the Force will be with you. Always.